So, Spencer, you requested to be on this episode.
Really? I just want to preface that I've been drinking before this, by the way.
I think you're going to need to be drinking for this movie. I mention all this because I had never seen this before. So
neither had I.
Okay, but you're a Corman fan.
I'm a big Corman fan. I'm a
same.
big Frankenstein fan.
Okay.
So
I don't know if being a fan of Frankenstein matters here.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, the little bit that I knew about it intrigued me. I mean, like Corman is kind of enough to get me to show up, but also knowing that it's based on a Brian Aldiss story, and then additionally that that story involves the real Victor Frankenstein and Mary Shelley inhabiting the same world.
Right.
That's enough for me to be sufficiently intrigued that I did request, while not having ever seen this movie before, kind of hoping for, two great tastes to taste great together. And maybe my verdict would be not so much, but there's some interesting things to discuss.
Good night, folks. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
I was going to say, yeah, so do you regret that request?
As much as I regret plenty of movies that sound like a good idea at the time.
It's not the worst of the worst movies you could
watch
unknowingly.
And it has a cool poster, so there is that. So on this episode of the Kulturecast, ladies and gentlemen, I am still your host, much to the chagrin of many, Chris Tashu. I am joined once again by my good friend. They are one of the hosts of Scary Stories We Tell, another show over on the Weirding Way Media Network. Your friend and mine, Jess Byard.
Hello.
And the first time on this show, though I have done several episodes of the Projection Booth podcast with him. He is a filmmaker and he teaches at Northwestern. Soon to be your friend, but he's mine, Spencer Parsons.
Hello.
And on this episode of the Kulturecast, we're still watching Universal monster movies that aren't made by Universal.
That's
boy.
the theme. I enjoy popping in on these because I forget what these themes are when I sign up for the movie, because I sign up so far advanced. So I just kind of don't know what the theme is. I just watch a movie.
Well, this is a movie. On this episode of the Kulturecast, we're talking about 1990s Roger Corman direct Frankenstein Unbound.
30 years ago, Roger Corman began to explore the dark side of the American psyche with movies like The Undead, The Pit and the Pendulum, and the original Little Shop of Horrors. Now, he feels the world is ready for the greatest horror story ever told, as it's never been told before. Frankenstein Unbound, starring John Hurt, Raul Julia, and Bridget Fonda, directed by Roger Corman.
So the film is written and directed by Roger Corman, along with some writing credits from F.X. Feeney. Like Spencer mentioned, it is based on the story Frankenstein Unbound by Brian Aldiss, and it stars John Hurt, Raul Julia, Bridget Fonda, Jason Patric, and a couple other folks, but primarily John Hurt and Raul Julia. John Hurt plays Dr. Buchanan, a Frankenstein of his own right, who may or may not create his own Frankenstein monster, which sends him back in time to meet none other than Victor Frankenstein, played by Raul Julia, who also happens to be friends with Mary Shelley, played by Bridget Fonda. It's just like a name-dropping extravaganza right here at the top.
Just whoever is involved with Frankenstein and the story, at the very least, you get to be in this movie.
Right. If you were name-dropped in any capacity, you're part of this film now.
Yeah, this is for a 1990 movie. This is a very solid cast. This is like Bridget Fonda at that point is a real up and comer. People are very excited about her. Raul Julia, incredibly respected at that time. John Hurt, of course, fantastic. And, Jason Patrick coming off of a bunch of other stuff. So this is actually like a pretty stellar cast for a movie that is for sure less than stellar.
Yes. So Jess, kick us off. What did you think of Frankenstein Unbound?
Look.
Jess is about to come clean, everybody.
Look, I was really on board for this movie for all of those reasons that Spencer just rattled off. The cast alone, spot on. I love John Hurt. I love Raul Julia. Raul Julia was not with us long enough and did not have enough screen time, in my opinion. So getting to watch him in anything is at least, it's nice to be able to see him in things. But the only thing that kept me going through this entire movie was the Shelley, Lord Byron throuple aspect. That's the only thing I cared about.
Yeah, made me want to watch Gothic again.
Right, exactly. That's kind of just what I was thinking. It kept reminding me like of that. Like it's like every time we were with them, I was like, I would just rather be watching Gothic, which is, that's never what you want from a movie, is just be like, I would rather be watching this. I think that it's a very ambitious plot. I had no idea that it was set in 2031 to begin with, which is funny in a variety of aspects. And I will also say that one thing that kept me going through this movie is John Hurt and his Knight Rider car, just blazing through the fields of England randomly throughout the day.
And he doesn't even have to worry about refilling it with gas or anybody killing him or anything.
No. Or anybody like being like, hey, you're very clearly not from around here, at least. So what the fuck?
I'm Nouveau American. The fuck you are.
The fuck you are. You're John Hurt.
I was extremely envious of the batteries in that car. I was like, if I could, I don't even want to drive anything, but if I could have, batteries that work like that for my phone or my laptop, I'd just be set.
Well, I don't even know what they don't, again, like for a movie that spends a lot of time explaining things, they don't explain a lot of the future technology. The future aspect of the movie is rather glossed over, it feels like. Spencer, tell me a little bit about your thoughts, feelings, and analysis of our dear film here, Frankenstein Unbound.
So the idea of Frankenstein and Mary Shelley inhabiting the same world, and that the novel Frankenstein in a way could be some kind of, Mary Shelley's In Cold Blood, like true crime sort of thing, instead of being, a novel of the imagination. That's a kind of interesting concept, but I will say it's also the kind of concept that I've seen in a couple of other movies, and it seems never to quite work. Roger Corman, I really love him as a director. I will throw down for Roger Corman as a director in his main career. The Wild Angels is one of my all-time favorite movies. I will watch a number of his films. I don't believe the myth that he is only a producer. Great producer, great finder of talent, obviously. But he's also a really great director in his own right. But I think clearly after the number of years that he had hung up his directing hat, he's just, I don't know, maybe not capable of bringing his A game to this. But the screenplay that he and FX Feeney wrote together is not a great script. You can have some good concepts along the way, but as you say, there's kind of constant explanation of things, but at the same time, there's a lot of important things that are not explained, and there are dramatic turns that just don't seem to have the stakes quite right. John Hurt's Dr. Buchanan comes back into the past and spends most of his time, in a kind of wonderful altruistic way, trying to save this poor woman from being hanged erroneously for a crime that was actually committed by the Frankenstein monster. But there's just something about that as a plot motor that doesn't quite seem to fully make sense as the main goal for much of the movie. And Raul Julia as Dr. Frankenstein, who definitely is a bad guy in this movie, just seems to not care at all. That said, I'm going to pick the thing that I liked best in the movie to talk about here, which was the funeral for the bicycle. About 5 minutes in, there's this group of kids like burying a bicycle in a yard in a shallow grave, and everything at that moment kind of picked up for me just a little bit, and I was like, oh, this might be a movie. And then within a couple of minutes I found out I was wrong.
This is in fact not a film. This is a poor facsimile of entertainment. So I kind of have an admission here. I have never seen a Roger Corman movie.
Oh, wow.
Ever?
Wow.
Take him and run him out of town with pitchforks and torches.
Well, I would have many recommendations for you. I think there are a number of really wonderful films that he made.
Is this one of them? I'm kidding. I'm purely kidding. So with that kind of out of the way, with not a lot of Roger Corman, I don't have a lot of reference points with Roger Corman. So to take Corman out of the picture here and just say, all right, movie's directed by somebody, whoever it is, I don't know their style from a hole in the ground. I only know this movie. Okay, that out of the way. It has some interesting ideas. I just don't think it really expounds upon the interesting ones. It kind of introduces a bunch of stuff and then it just goes, well, that stuff's not important. It's this stuff that is. Well, it's like, well, don't tell us the other things because you're going to get my hopes up that we're going to have an interesting movie about, I don't know, like you said, kind of this kind of weird mix of fiction and nonfiction coming to a head. And instead it's just John Hurt wandering the countryside for an hour and a half. And the craziest thing about this movie is this is an hour and a half movie and fucking feels like 2.5 hours.
It does
feel long.
Oh, it's so just like meandering and without direction. And I think the saddest thing about this movie is the cast. Like, why are they in this movie? Like, why?
They're just given nothing to do. And I don't know why any of them chose to do this movie.
What, did somebody hold them hostage?
My suspicion is they showed up for this movie because of Corman. And I know that's going to sound funny because we think of Corman as this like king of the B movies and whatnot. But, you know, especially around 1990, he had his reputation had really gone up because a lot of the filmmakers that he shepherded through their first couple of films in the early 70s, you know, in like 1990, you've got like Martin Scorsese and Jonathan Demme at their absolute peak. You know, this is around the time of Goodfellas. This is you know, just after Married to the Mob
as well.
Time of, and
Silence of the Lambs, a film Corman is in at one point, even to Jonathan Demme's credit.
Exactly, that's right. Well, and Corman was in a bunch of other you know, movies made by filmmakers who really wanted to nod to him you know, throughout the 80s. So I think that that's part of it that did it. And then there must have been some real producer juice on this to put together the deal, you know. I don't know exactly what it was. FX Feeney is also really interesting. You know, great film critic, and that doesn't necessarily always translate into great screenwriter unless we're talking about Roger Ebert and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. You know,
Wow.
But FX Feeney here, you know, also an interesting figure. So I can kind of see where this all might have seemed kind of interesting. I think they shot it in a location that people might have wanted to go to. But yeah, boy, oh boy, it ends up feeling really sad for all involved by the end. And it's you know, one of the things that's that I guess I'll pick out as a Frankenstein fan is that the Frankenstein makeup over the years, people try all kinds of different things, you know, to you know, get away from the Jack Smith Universal flat top approach. But this Frankenstein monster, which looks like one of the lesser Nightbreed, is for my money particularly uninspiring.
To call it Nightbreed might be to insult Nightbreed.
Well, yeah, I would say not the hero level Nightbreed. I'm talking about, you know, where they ran out of ideas on some of those background monsters.
It's incredibly lazy. Like it is very just, here's what we are going to try for a generic. To me, it's weird because the fact that this movie does, like, bridge the sci-fi world, which is also an interesting choice.
It felt like Twilight Zone 1985. It felt like an episode of an anthology series, didn't it?
It definitely felt very TV. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Definitely very TV vibes. And I felt like they tried to make the monster look a little futuristic for some reason, but it doesn't play well because the monster isn't from the future time. It's from the time period that John Hurt goes back to. So it has these like metal kind of rings coming out of its head, and it does have a very sci-fi future-y monster look. And overall, my biggest complaint, aside from the fact that this movie is overall just very boring, there's not a lot going on. I don't like that the monster is so like overtly awful for most of the movie, where it kind of takes some of the, what we know from the Frankenstein, what we're used to from the Frankenstein world, and like right off the bat, this monster is just kind of like an obnoxious, I don't know, like there was just something very off-putting to it that didn't have quite that humanity, at least, for the first half of the movie. But even with, our original Frankenstein, you still feel something for the monster kind of right off the bat. But here, it really takes a while.
I really agree. And, Frankenstein is a very, Raul Julia shows up, but this is not a very conflicted character. This is an ambitious scientist who's an asshole. And the monster that he creates is not a kind of, tragic hero out of Milton. He's not which is what, Mary Shelley was trying to do, was kind of create a Milton-esque Satan figure, someone who is misunderstood and cast down rather than necessarily inherently bad. And so we get both a creator and a monster that are very one note kind of bad, and then Dr. Buchanan from the future seems to be just befuddled by the notion of running into these couple of people who are terrible, And per usual, the bride of the monster, including the novel, which might be one of my very favorite books of all time, and which I've read a number of times. So excuse me when I start to get pedantic coming up here about the novel and Mary Shelley's vision. But per usual, the bride of the monster gets short shrift. And I will say, for a couple of seconds, things started to perk up for me when the bride arrived, because she had a more interesting makeup than the main monster. And the possibility that it was like Elizabeth brought back, Elizabeth, who's supposed to marry Frankenstein, brought back as the bride. That got me excited for a moment, but they did absolutely nothing with it. She's just like out of the movie very quickly.
Yeah, that aspect of it is like you said, like it actually starts to pick up again, like right in that moment. You're like, okay, this could be interesting, and then within minutes, just nope. We got to wrap this movie up.
And wrap it up in a way that is so, again, things just happen in this movie, but this movie really, I'm sitting here saying, oh, the things just happen in this movie, but things don't just happen. They spend a lot of time explaining stuff, but then things just happen that make no sense. Like all of a sudden they're thrown into the far future because reasons.
I thought, like, I was watching it and I looked down at my phone for just like a minute. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, wait, how did we get to this weird frosty future planet all of the sudden? I guess it's because at the beginning, overall, the main threat overall is that John Hurt created this thing that I guess effectively ripped a hole in the universe.
I guess so, and destroys the environment in the process.
So in doing so, he crosses back into the past in a very convenient time period for him.
Right?
And for this story.
It's like the rift sent him right where he needed to go.
Right. Because it was a sentient rift. I guess.
I guess,
I don't know.
but it's never explained because again, like John Hurt even says, like, I must be here for like a reason. And it's like, we never find out what that reason is. Is the reason to kill the Frankenstein monster or to prevent the Frankenstein monster from wreaking havoc? Like, I don't understand.
And here's where I'm going to say a thing that sounds counterintuitive based on what we've been saying, and that this movie is only an hour and a half long, but it felt like 2 hours. I think that if it had been like an hour 20, like hour 15, hour 20, it might not have felt as meandering because they would have had a little more time to do what they were trying to do. Because like I said at the beginning of this, I feel like it was a very ambitious idea. It just wasn't completely thought out, I don't think, and it wasn't given any time to breathe. Like, we're like an hour and a half only. Everything is moving, but with no real action points. It's just and then.
Right.
There's no actual like plot, like really riveting, interesting things or character development, because none of these people change at all.
Yeah. Well, and also Dr. Buchanan has these rifts in consciousness at regular intervals in the movie, and I got kind of interested in that way, that he would seem to get like knocked out into a weird dream world and then come out of it in a slightly different from what was expected version of what we had seen. But after a certain point, that just seemed to become convenient, to like sort of put him in peril of some kind. Then he's like knocked out, then he wakes up, but then things are kind of okay again in order to make the plot move forward.
Right. It's like, and I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a budgetary issue. Maybe that's I don't know what, but like, and I mean, the dream sequences are very Corman. Like that is one of his staples for sure. And I generally enjoy them. They're always very interesting to watch. But yeah, for some reason in this movie though, they kind of get in the way of the actual actiony parts of a movie, which in general, a movie needs to have action because it is a visual medium and needs to be, have a momentum to it. And those dream sequences every time just completely put it to a halt. And then boom, we wake up and everything, like you said, it's, we're back, in a field or in the car or, wherever, in a bed somewhere.
Yeah, very, very strange.
Well, and again, I mean, I'm not sure what they thought they were doing by setting it in the future and then coming back to the past. Because again, we have these kind of interesting ideas of John Hurt's also a scientist. He's also created his own kind of monster that's unchecked, that's doing its own destructive kind of things to the people surrounding him, albeit the scope is different for John Hurt's character versus Raul Julia. But there are those kind of parallels that they could draw, and they kind of do, but they don't do anything with it. I know this is going to sound strange, but I was expecting a more philosophically engaging movie. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. Yeah. It's even within the kind of right out of the gate, this is a pretty clunky kind of cheap movie that looks very much like a made for TV movie or something that I really love, but is definitely not cinematically amazing. There are a lot of ways in which it kind of resembles one of those Incredible Hulk with Bill Bixby kind of episodes in terms of its like cinematic style, right out of the gate. So I'm not necessarily expecting to have this like great spectacular movie story. But on the other hand, I think you're right that the sense of starting in the future, going into the past, potentially dealing with a lot of the philosophical underpinnings that Mary Shelley was bringing to her game and were part of it. Expecting those kinds of things, then you could even have a movie that's like more talky or whatever, but could still be quite satisfying. Just on the basis of like, well, let's work out a problem. And I think part of that, Chris, and I don't know if you felt the same about this, but again, this is where I'm going to get pedantic about like Frankenstein mythology. I think they really doubled down on like the absolute dumbest reading of Frankenstein as a story or as a myth. And that dumbest possible reading that comes up over and over again is the like, there are just things that man is not meant to know, which one, that's just not a very interesting idea. And two, that's absolutely positively not what Mary Shelley was after. Now, what Mary Shelley was after is a separate thing. Roger Corman, FX Feeney, Brian Aldiss, they're all welcome to be after a totally different thing. But to come back to this like really dumb, trite, there are some things that man is not meant to know, sort of lesson is just not, that's, okay, yeah, fine. For the 50th time, we're going to get that particular, version of things. But the novel provides a whole lot of really interesting ways in, for philosophical speculation and nothing, it doesn't even have to be terribly complex. And I'll just throw out, one philosophical side of it in terms of, Frankenstein, the novel as being, more or less the invention of science fiction as a genre. One of the huge things that Mary Shelley is dealing with as science fiction is not saying that, this scientist shouldn't have made this monster or this person should not have pursued science in order to overcome death. What she's really after is that he's ultimately irresponsible and can't deal with what he's done. It's more of a human failing of responsibility than some notion that like, we just should never conquer death. That's not exactly what it's really not what she's after. And the point of it's somehow beyond our ability or whatever. That's really not quite it. Just a basic philosophical notion of how do you take responsibility for your actions could be really interesting. And in fact, with John Hurt, that's there right out of the gate. So I was kind of interested that there was maybe going to be this story about responsibility because he's creating a weapon at the beginning of the movie that then causes this time rift, only to have it turn into like, I guess I shouldn't have created anything at all.
Right.
And Frankenstein shouldn't have created anything at all. Which I don't know. I guess maybe we all should stay home and get stoned and, not create interesting things or pursue science, but maybe that could be the message. But then let's actually have that as the message. Let's do the Cheech and Chong version of Frankenstein where it's like,
right.
Hey, everybody, let's just hang and smoke a bowl.
Well, but to your point, I mean, the idea behind this movie is it could have been a compelling one. And I don't know why. This is going to sound kind of strange to put it this way, but I don't know why anyone adapts Frankenstein the way that they adapt it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, look,
the original is amazing. Everybody will agree there, but like Frankenstein adaptations are a dime a dozen, and most of them are really not good.
No.
Truth.
No, yeah. Most of them fall on the like, well, you just should have just don't ask questions, don't challenge things, don't do anything.
Michael Crichton did that in Jurassic Park. Like,
yes.
Right. And it's like, well, look, I get it. Yes, I do subscribe to the idea of like, just because you can doesn't mean you should in some aspects. Sure. Yes.
Absolutely.
But there's also, like, what if we take the route of like, okay, take the responsibility that you created this thing. Now we need to learn how to like, okay, we accidentally created something that was a little bit more out of our control than we initially thought. Now let's figure out how we can approach it and fix it and go about creating something in the future that is less, intrusive, horrific, whatever we're doing here, be it ripping a hole in the universe or creating, a person for all intents and purposes. And it can be a story about like learning how to be compassionate and learning how to, understand what you're doing before you jump right in and do it. Like, not that, not instead of teaching, don't do things at all and just sit there and be completely ignorant to the world. It's all right, you learned a thing, it didn't go the way you wanted it to, let's grow as a person.
It's also a very weird direction to come from with someone like Roger Corman as a creator, just as someone who is a creator at heart. Like, I've always found it very weird that, like anytime you make, George Lucas is Victor Frankenstein for Star Wars, right? Like it's its own Frankenstein monster now. It's surpassed its creation and its creator, and it's its own thing. Like, there are plenty of ways to draw parallels to things that aren't just a literal corpse, like a literal dead corpse. And I would never want to adapt the Frankenstein story in a way where it's trying to be like an action movie or like a horror movie, because it's not that. It's just, it's the questions that are being asked and the messages that Mary Shelley are trying to get you to think about are not anything that most adaptations of Frankenstein even have any interest in kind of broaching. This included in that lot.
Well, it's interesting because the character of Mary Shelley within this movie is a very confused version of her. You know, like Bridget Fonda working hard, whatever, but she actually kind of articulates the, like, this is an affront to God kind of point. And it's like, no, she wouldn't have said such a thing. She was an atheist from a family of atheists. She doesn't care about whether this is like, you know, an affront to God. The ideas of God that she's taking on in Frankenstein are about like, what if a person took on the powers of what we think of as God? What happens when we become God? That's a very different thing from whether, a scientific idea is an affront to God. And then a couple of scenes later, she has that ridiculous line where she's like, Percy and Lord Byron espouse free love, but I do it, or whatever. That was its own very strange kind of moment. And of course, she again, as a person, she came from a family, and she was a wild one, from a wild family. But she came from a family that was at the forefront of philosophical investigation. I mean, her mother, if you want to read something radically feminist, read Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Like Mary Shelley's mom, wrote this incredible philosophical text, and kind of in response to what Godwin wrote before. So it's like there's really great intense ideas, and in fact, these people are radical by today's standards, not just by the standards of the early 1800s. And to see that that's not reflected in the characterization beyond a kind of suggested idea of this throuple, and of, yes, I practice free love so that then she can have sex with John Hurt, but there's not really a sex scene or anything. It's all just sort of playing around the edges of these people in ways that keep us from getting something more interesting out of the story.
And I don't know why. I guess
I think it's because it's too short.
I guess so.
Because they were cramming too much into an hour and a half. Like, I would have definitely liked to spend more time with the Shelleys and Lord Byron, and just like getting to know those characters more. I mean, if you're gonna throw us into a world and where they exist in real time with Victor Frankenstein, I want to learn more about these people. Like, I want to learn about them. I want to learn how they connect. I want to learn how, more about Victor Frankenstein beyond just he is like kind of a pretentious asshole that is a bit too smart for his own good. Like, we just get very surface level versions of all of these characters. And I really do think it is very much in part that they tried to cram too ambitious of an idea into an hour and a half. It's just too much. Like, you could have either had, make it, if you want to keep the sci-fi element, then pick us up where John Hurt's already there, and he's been there, and he's gotten to know these people, and maybe he's telling us the story about these people. Or
somebody saw Time After Time, and they just didn't do as good of a job writing this script as they did that script. I mean, I haven't even seen Time After Time, and I know that this movie and that movie share a similar premise, right? A person out of time, a person who is famous in a way, obviously Jack the Ripper versus Mary Shelley and Victor Frankenstein, but the same idea. Obviously, that movie is well regarded. Nobody talks this movie, which, to your point, Jess, the biggest shame is that it's a Raul Julia performance.
Well, let's take the opportunity to recommend Time After Time, because I've seen it. I really like that movie. David Warner as Jack the Ripper. You can't do better. Malcolm McDowell as H.G. Wells. Again, terrific. And the whole way that that plays out. And Nicholas Meyer, wrote and directed it. He's great. that movie's a really, really fun kind of riff on ideas like this. And it's not that movie, just by way of comparison, is so philosophically great or anything. It's just that even on the level of being a fairly straightforward genre film, science fiction plus some Jack the Ripper horror, it really works. It plays. It's like a fun, it's a fun thing to go with. Unfortunately, this is not. Yeah, and I guess it's why it's Corman's last. I think probably that he didn't take this as a launch into directing more films afterwards. I think for somebody like him is probably a sign that he knows it wasn't very good as well.
Right.
I guess because I guess so. I mean, it's bad, but this is not like an affront to like good taste. It's just kind of it's boring. Yeah, it's just kind of a dud. It like the worst offense a movie can have anymore, really, is just being boring.
But it's a shame because this is a guy that did Bucket of Blood, which is the total delight in the space of a week, and then not long after turned around and made Little Shop of Horrors in 2 days, with like an early Jack Nicholson performance that's hilarious. And he made Bloody Mama, which I actually personally prefer to Bonnie and Clyde. And that was kind of his, Ma Barker response and like rip off of Bonnie and Clyde, but is kind of much more interesting to me personally as cinema about the era that it's depicting and the kind of criminality that was at the time being kind of mythologized. So, Corman did some like really, really great stuff, churned out enough work that there are, yes, some other pretty boring films, but it's especially disappointing as a Corman fan because this is where he returns, after many years of absence. And it's not as if he's making so many films so quickly that a bunch of them are guaranteed to be bad. This is one where he steps in and he's going to make a movie, and then it's just, really, really boring. Feels like, a bad TV movie and kind of thoughtless.
I have seen another Roger Corman film, and it was for the projection booth, and I didn't realize it was a Corman movie until I thought about it again. Now, the Intruder, the Shatner movie.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's great.
Yeah.
What a weird movie.
That one is great.
Well, I believe that episode may have aired sometime in the fall of 2016. So if
that's fair, a long time ago.
Well, also, if you know why, then you know why. It's I don't know, like I've heard all of these things about Roger Corman and these kinds of movies that Corman made, right? Because this is in the vein of these other Corman movies. Gory, it's over the top, it's high concept, and then this is just like the antithesis of what I was expecting.
Yeah. Like there's a high concept in there.
Yeah,
but
there
again,
is.
It's just there's not enough, and I don't even want to say it's a budget thing because Roger Corman, again, is known for making movies incredibly fast and incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
So I can't even blame like, oh, there wasn't enough budget to like do the sci-fi stuff properly, because really, honestly, the sci-fi stuff is really not a major part of it. It's really just the vehicle that is used to get John Hurt from one place to another.
No pun intended.
Like, yeah, I mean, it and then the car for, I guess, comedic effect because it talks the whole time.
It's like a mix of the Back to the Future car and Knight Rider.
Yeah, but other than that, the sci-fi elements really aren't like a major part of it. So I think that it's not a very well written, fleshed out script. And it does feel very cheap. Lazy. It looks cheap. It feels very lazy. And I mean, this is Roger Corman directed. This was co-written. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He wrote it with FX Feeney.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because there are definitely lines of dialogue as you go along that pop out as potentially kind of funny. But it's and funny in this outrageous kind of way. Not that they're really witty, but that people say things kind of bluntly in this way that early in Corman's career would have played as really funny. There's a thing that Corman went through in the 70s and 80s that I think is is maybe a little bit informative of why this movie is so dull. So Corman was one of the first to take, kind of lowbrow, low budget concepts that nobody was taking very seriously and actually play up comedy in them. So before Susan Sontag comes along with, Notes on Camp, you have Corman not really doing camp exactly, but this kind of self-conscious recognition that the material he's working with is actually better and more fun if you go ahead and recognize the absurdity. And so Corman was working with that. And I mentioned Susan Sontag's Notes on Camp in part because Corman is like ahead of a wave of treating this kind of material with some humor. And then by the 70s and 80s, he had to put up with some like interesting kind of reactions to his work as if the humor wasn't intentional and as if what he was doing was so bad it was good. The sort of misreading of ideas of camp that was happening around that time. And he took it to heart. He felt very hurt that his work was not being appreciated. And in fact, like with some of the productions that he was doing in the 70s and 80s, he tried to get Paul Bartel to take jokes out of Death Race 2000 because he was worried that it wouldn't be, sort of taken seriously. Now, Paul Bartel is absolutely a creature of camp. And like, that's what he's good at, like a very great, straightforward, campy director, working with people like Mary Warnoff, who absolutely get that kind of sensibility. But Corman being a little bit older, and a little bit stodgier and having sort of taken a kind of insult was trying to pull back on some of the humor in his own projects like Death Race 2000. Forbidden World was another one where they cut back on some of the comedy that was in it. And I think there's something like really weird and maybe hurt and glum about this. And it's maybe I've gone on about this because I'm psychoanalyzing Roger Corman in favor of going, oh, well, he felt really hurt and that's why he made this kind of bad movie. But it does track with certain things in his later directing and producing career where he kind of he was ahead of the time. He was ahead of his time for a while and then weirdly fell out of step with his time as everybody caught up with him. He's like, I find him a little bit tragic in that way.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I definitely see what you mean, comparatively speaking to his producing career in, the mid to late 80s going into the 90s. There is a significant, especially if you compare it to like, let's say the Vincent Price era of Roger Corman, where everything is campy and tongue in cheek and goofy. And yet still very, unsettling and has these very serious themes underlying throughout all of them. But they're very high camp. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with Vincent Price, sure. But you don't cast Vincent Price if you're not trying to go for that vibe, right? And that's that's my favorite era of Corman, But you look at something like he produced, like The Howling, like that's a pretty serious movie. Like it is, maybe in hindsight, and with effects and everything that it has aged and maybe made it a little bit more campy. But for the time and for what it was and for some of the, topics that it touches on, it's a pretty gritty, not so nice to think about movie when you really start like pulling it apart. And I think that you can see a little bit of that in this movie where there are some of those, a little of those darker themes of like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And if you did, well, what now? But they just don't go far enough. And I can also see that being, like Roger Corman is not a young man now, that's for damn sure. And he still wasn't a young man in 1990. It could be very much just losing steam. Like, you know what? This is my last one. I know it's my last one, probably. Like, I'm sure he didn't go into this movie thinking, like you said, like he didn't go into this movie thinking that he was going to like launch off into like a new series of, reimagined Universal monsters or whatever like that. He wasn't going to be doing that. And that's it's a bummer. Like you said, it is kind of a tragic like story to see people like that. Like George Romero is a good example of that. Wes Craven, John Carpenter, all of them are very good examples of people in the genre that were ahead of their time. And then once people actually started to catch up to them is when they started, kind of losing the step. with everybody. And, most of those directors that I've just listed's last movies aren't awesome. They're really not. They're
I will I'll argue in favor of Romero's last few works, and I know that people really, really hate Survival of the Dead. I'm gonna say people are wrong. But I absolutely I'm with what you're saying. And one of the things about Corman more recently, because he's still relatively active, but he did eventually just, I guess it was a if you can't beat him, join him sort of thing. He just went in for the so bad it's good, like Sci-Fi Channel monster movies, Sharktopus and those kinds of things are what he does now. But it's an interesting, sad kind of thing. It also could be a contractual obligation. The weird deals happen, and this might have been a movie where they started talking about it in 1985, and he was really jazzed to do it. And then development happened, and all kinds of weird stuff. And then by 1990, he's not into it anymore. I don't know the whole history of this, but we do have to remember that that movie making is a kind of it's a harsh mechanism that can sometimes leave people that we think of as artists just showing up to finish some damn thing that they signed a contract to do, and they're as stuck with with doing a job as any wage slave.
Oh, I have been there. I absolutely understand that.
Well, in a lot of ways, that's what this feels like. This feels like just get this over the finish line. Don't put in any more effort than you need to. Don't put in any more effort than we want you to. This needs to be the minimum amount of effort. And I just don't understand why. Because again, it has a relatively high budget for the time. They weren't batting with $100,000. They have a budget of $11 million. This is distributed by 20th Century Fox. It's not like it's an Orion picture or New World Pictures. This is goddamn 20th Century Fox. It's such a shame. It really is. Because this movie was the one I was the most excited for, hands down.
Yeah.
Which other ones have you covered this month?
Just Silver Bullet.
Oh, okay.
Which was all right.
Gary Busey is great in Silver Bullet.
Kind of steals the entire movie, one might say.
Yeah.
Spencer, what is your preferred adaptation of Frankenstein?
Oh, that's a good question. Bride of Frankenstein is really hard to beat. But just given the nature of our conversation and like the philosophical issues we've talked about, I'm going to actually say that possibly the most accurate to Mary Shelley Frankenstein movie I've ever seen is Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein. For all the jokes and everything, that one actually really nails it. And for instance, earlier, Jess, when you were describing an idea about like learning humanity through the confrontation with the monster, that's what that movie is about, 1,000%. To the point where the most recent time that I saw that movie, and I have a very particular relationship to Frankenstein, so take this with a certain grain of salt. But the speech that Peter Boyle makes at the end when he's going to save Gene Wilder after he's had Gene Wilder's brain material put into him, and he makes a big speech to the town to keep people from killing his creator. It legitimately made me cry. I was in tears over this little speech by a comical character who a few moments earlier I'd just been delighted by, seeing him dance badly and then putting on the Ritz number and go, super, super, So it's like that movie actually accomplishes so much. And it's very much to Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks's credit that they really did an incredible. I'll throw down even better than Bride of Frankenstein in the original James Whale Frankenstein. Young Frankenstein, hands down, best Frankenstein adaptation I've ever seen.
Jess, same question kicked to you.
I'm very partial to Hammer Frankenstein movies. I'm a big fan of those. I like the visual. I love Christopher Lee as the monster. I love the Universal monsters. I have my, big Bride of Frankenstein poster. I do love Bride of Frankenstein. I love the original Frankenstein Universal, but entertainment like wise, I definitely like I gear more towards the Hammer horror version of Frankenstein. But I mean, I love Young Frankenstein too. I mean, that's definitely one of my favorite comedic movies of all time. And I'm not, as I don't have much of a connection to Frankenstein, as far as, which monster I live with for myself. But
for me, Frankenstein, I like the story Frankenstein, and all the adaptations that I've seen for the most part, outside of the original and then The Bride, it's varying degrees of kind of just doing the same thing and to varying degrees of success. I haven't seen Young Frankenstein in a long time. I have seen no Hammer horror movies, be they Frankenstein or Dracula or anything. I think
really like the variation of Frankenstein and Penny Dreadful as well.
Yeah, Rory Kinnear is pretty good in the show as Frankenstein. I don't know. I would probably, for me, I think I would have to go with Bride of Frankenstein. But Frankenstein, for me, I like the story, but the adaptations just kind of always fall short. I am a fan of Van Helsing, though, so maybe I should say it. Maybe that discounts anything I say from here on out forward.
That's the hottest take on this episode.
What's wrong with Van Helsing? I mean, it's like The Mummy, but dumber. And with Hugh Jackman. Again, it's a big dumb action movie with the Universal monster. We haven't seen anything else like that since. They tried and they never even got past making The Mummy. So, I don't know. I don't like that version of Frankenstein in the movie because, again, Frankenstein's not an action movie character. That has never served the Frankenstein narrative in my mind. Just like if you're trying to do Dracula, it's not really an action movie either. You can set a Frankenstein-like monster somewhere, or vampires, or things like that. But for me, it's just, I like the original source material of Frankenstein. It's worth a read like that. And it's not a super in-depth read. It's not like a 5-day read. It's like a 2-day read. It's like an afternoon, really. You can get through it. It's a pretty easy to get through novel. Like, for me, I would rather just read the book in a lot of ways, because you get a lot of stuff from the book that the movies and adaptations rarely get at. Rarely do they even kind of scratch the surface, like you've mentioned, Spencer.
Well, it's like in this one, there are some other examples. I mentioned the beat in Young Frankenstein where he speaks very articulately. The articulacy of the monster from the book is one of the things that the movies always struggle with. And I think, in part, they made a really good choice in terms of how to depict the monster within the terms of an hour-and-a-half film with the resources that they had available. In the Universal, original Frankenstein, where Karloff is an almost wordless figure in that, and then only picks up a little bit of dialogue after. So the monster in Frankenstein Unbound has dialogue, for instance, but it's still dumb dialogue. He's not this sort of philosophical character that read a pile of books and learned how to really speak and has this pretty deep and articulate soul. And that's rare, in the movie versions of Frankenstein. There's a barrier to overcome there. And I've seen a stage version of Frankenstein where they gave him all the, lots of speeches that come directly from the book. And you know what? I can't say that I loved that. That stuff really fits the book, but it's very, very hard to dramatize. The fully articulate, but also uncannily hideous kind of monster that Mary Shelley writes about and can put in your imagination is just much harder to depict in cinema than I think anybody might have realized.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's just the story has a lot of nuance, and I don't think anybody wants to tell the nuanced version of the story. Why would they? It's not as entertaining or exciting as blowing shit up and having Frankenstein rip a guy's heart out. Like, it's just not as entertaining. That the long and the short of it. Like, Roger Corman's not going to make that movie, I don't think.
No, but to be fair, and this is also a trouble for Roger Corman. He didn't elicit a performance from the guy playing the monster with or without words that is even close to what we get from Peter Boyle or Karloff, or any of a number of other folks that have played the Frankenstein monster over time. So or like Robert De Niro. I mean, well, Robert De Niro, that movie has its own crazy problems, but that's an interesting bad movie. Like,
Yes.
the Branagh, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I am not going to say that's a good movie. I think it's a pretty terrible Frankenstein adaptation. But you know what? I'll watch it again sooner because it's bad in a really fun.
It's an anomaly.
It is. Yeah, De Niro's played it. But again, for my money, and maybe like I'm just a sucker for comedy. Phil Hartman's version of Frankenstein from the Tarzan, Tonto, and Frankenstein sketches on Saturday Night Live in the 90s. Like, Phil Hartman was really, like, not just hilarious, but there was a great pathos to his performance that I think was actually speaking to the original material. He's playing a very dumb monster, but a dumb monster who's sort of frightened and scared of things, and there's a lot of pathos to it. So the wordless performance in films and television can actually of Frankenstein can actually be quite powerful.
Well, anything is more powerful than what we get in this film, which is the problem. I mean, and we haven't even mentioned it, but what did end up happening at the end of this movie?
I have no clue.
Frankenstein's monster dies. Then
yes,
John Hurt is going to a city in the frozen wasteland that then has the spirit of Frankenstein's monster in it, or Frankenstein's monster is just in the air. Why is he unbound again?
No, actually, so here's the thing. That ending, it doesn't make a lick of sense, but it was like in the last few minutes, I was like, if you'd made the whole movie about this, that might have been interesting. This notion that the Frankenstein monster was not just this conquering of death by Dr. Frankenstein, but that there's something unleashed that is eternal, that that like goes with the Dr. Buchanan, like time rift and everything. Incredible. But develop that for, an hour and a half instead of for the like 10 minutes that it's like, wait, what's happening? How did we get here? How does Dr. Buchanan seem to know how to use this technology to defeat Frankenstein in this like weird multicolored laser lit Neverland that they go to?
You mean the local laser quest at your fucking
Really?
bowling alley?
I really can't tell you how they ended up there. Like, I cannot pinpoint the exact moment in the movie.
Well, I don't understand.
Yeah,
so they go to the future and then they go to this city because that's where they wandered into, and this city is just some sort of like nightmare hellscape.
I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's the future. It's what happened because of John Hurt's thing that he made.
I guess. But he's stuck there now. They're stuck there. They can't go back.
He's bound to his own creation, you see.
Oh, and the audience says, "Oh," in epiphany, all at the same time. Like, no, we don't. Like when the movie goes, "And now I'm unbound." Like, what the fuck? You didn't earn this. All you did is repeat the title of the movie. Okay, and
you accidentally went back in time.
Yeah, like, all right. Like, what is happening here?
You
John Hurt's
abandoned
just
the problem you created in your time period and went and did something else.
Yeah, and then you're complaining about Frankenstein doing it. Like, I missed where this is not all your fault, bro, because it is all your fault, bro. That's the thing. It's a weird story to tell because John Hurt's character shouldn't be sympathetic in the slightest.
No.
And he reason all of
never
this
redeems
happens.
himself.
Yeah. No, he
Right.
just goes, "I am Frankenstein" at the end, which felt like it was in the trailer for this movie. I wanted to like this movie. I really did. On paper, this movie really works. On paper, this movie really worked. Theoretically, this movie worked. But in practice, it's just like, fucking, okay. Like, way to put not just your worst foot forward, but just completely trip at the starting lineup and just not even try.
Oh, so sad.
It's
Great
a shame.
poster, though.
Great poster. Poster is the best part of this whole fucking movie. Holy shit. I would hang that poster on my wall if I didn't have to answer people what movie it was.
Be like, don't watch it.
Whatever it is, you
really
don't want to
like
see it. I just like the way this eye
man.
looks like really split up and cool, but the movie it's associated with, complete waste of time.
Man, I'll tell you the Frankenstein I want to see these days, because I'm on a big Clive Barker tear right now. I want to see his an adaptation of his Frankenstein in Love play from early in his career, that was like really crazy theater of cruelty, like, you know, horny, naked, weird Clive Barker.
I was going to say, you're just describing Clive Barker.
All right.
Well,
Horny,
I know.
Horny and weird. The Clive Barker story.
Yeah, but I guess the new Hellraiser, which was not good to me, but that got me watching all the other Hellraisers, many of which are not very good. But then also reading a bunch of Clive Barker, which is great. I love Clive Barker. Even bad Clive Barker is like better than a lot of stuff.
He also likes to name his things very hilariously. Like they all just, I mean, you know, look, as someone who's gay, I always think it's funny, but Nightbreed, Midnight Meat Train. Come on.
No, Midnight Meat Train is the greatest title ever. That's just so nuts.
And the fact that not only is it a short story, that they adapted it into a pretty good movie. And kept the original title.
Nightbreed?
No, Midnight Meat Train.
Midnight Meat Train.
Oh, Midnight Meat Train. Yeah.
Also Nightbreed, to be fair.
With what's his fucking name?
With B. Coops.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper.
And Vinnie Jones.
Well, I just recently read the novel Cabal, which Nightbreed is based on, and man, that thing is great. That's such a fun read, and I like Nightbreed pretty well, but the novel is really terrific. It's definitely better.
I love me some Clive Barker. Oh my God, his stuff is just wild, but so much fun, but also very sexy and horny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was just really disappointed that even if it was not great, that the new Hellraiser didn't get to play in theaters, just because my anticipation of the audience that's going to show up for a brand new Hellraiser movie. Like, I want to see all the horny leather people show up to a Hellraiser screening. I was really disappointed.
What? Me too.
All the horny leather daddies had to stay home.
Exactly. It's really disappointing. I feel like, you know, and I had to give money to the Disney Corporation.
That's fair. Also fair. Well, their heart's in it. Their heart is in it. Okay.
Their heart is. It is really unfortunate though that like the Disney Corporation has become the stewards of the Hellraiser franchise. It's really, really sad.
They've become the stewards of Frankenstein Unbound as well.
Yeah.
20th Century Fox, baby.
That's right. Well, it's time.
Is it going to be on Disney Plus this week?
It's time for Frankenstein Unbound to get adapted into a Hulu TV series by Disney. You know, they got to mine that IP.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see another Frankenstein Unbound thing in the future, given that it is based off of a adaptable source material.
Exactly.
Maybe it'll be better. Again, I'd be curious to read the source material. I would assume it's better than this.
Yeah, I was looking it up. I haven't read it, but I was looking up stuff about it. It seems like it might even be lesser Brian Aldiss to begin with, but you know, interesting figure. Brian Aldiss, for anybody listening, if you're not familiar with his work, great science fiction writer who wrote a story that was adapted into AI by Kubrick, and then Spielberg ultimately directed that.
Another film I've never seen.
Oh, you haven't seen AI? It's pretty berserk. That movie definitely. Have you seen it?
I don't think so.
It's pretty wild. It has its fans, like, and I've seen it multiple times, so I guess I might be counted as one of those. I don't think it's a good movie, but I think it's a really fascinating one, and you know, worthy of checking out. I definitely recommend it. There's some great weird stuff in it, and Jude Law as a sex robot, you know, but directed by Steven Spielberg, is pretty weird and funny.
It's about a sex robot?
There's a sex robot in it, played by Jude Law, but remember, directed by Steven Spielberg. So like Kubrick's idea of sex robot is going to be one thing, and then Spielberg's is totally another, and it is It is the strangest notion of a sex robot I could imagine, but that's what makes the movie fun.
All right.
You have sold me more so
Yeah.
than I would watch AI over even contemplating watching Frankenstein Unbound again. So,
Yes.
God.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, Spencer, final thoughts on Frankenstein Unbound?
Well, disappointing, but as I don't know that I'm a Corman completist because he's made so much work. I may never get to all of it, but as a Corman fan, I'm glad I finally saw it and can check it off of the list and, know the shape of the career better. And I guess it's another Frankenstein adaptation I can, knock off. But yeah, not probably going to watch it again soon. I think I'll watch the Paul Morrissey Frankenstein again sooner.
Jess?
Yes, Paul Morrissey Frankenstein.
I love
That
it.
one I would definitely watch again. Frankenstein Unbound, very disappointing, very meandering. The cast is a gaslight to lure you in.
I like that. You're being gaslit.
Perfect.
And I am still very much a Corman fan. I respect Roger Corman for what he did in the industry, both just for genre and just for the film industry in general. But this unfortunately was kind of a bust to go out on. But you know what? With such the catalog of things that he has, it will not be the thing that he is remembered for, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, no, that, again, having only seen one other Roger Corman movie, apparently, this is not the way I want to think about Roger Corman. So I am going to rectify that situation as quickly as possible because, again, to both of your points, to talk about Frankenstein as possibly a creature that is without a soul or searching for a soul. It's a pretty apt comparison for this movie. It is a film without a soul or a heart at the center of it. It's just emotionless throughout. There are no emotional stakes. And the actors that do show up aren't given much to do, even though, again, I mean, this is 4 years before Raul Julia passes away. I mean, it's just, again, like the fact that this is one of his performances and he showed up and not most everybody else didn't is a shame, because when you say Victor Frankenstein played by Raul Julia, that I'm sold already. Like
Right.
I'm already there. But when you get there, the destination is, like just mentioned, it's a gaslight. And like you've mentioned, Spencer, to boil down the Frankenstein story to these kind of idiotic bullet points is really to just miss the entire source material. And then all the subsequent adaptations that have come out that they could avoid or lean on or kind of go whole hog on, or take ideas that someone else did and go with them. And they just don't do anything. They just kind of retell the Frankenstein story. Yay. But in a really sad way. So on that note, we will take a break and we'll play a preview for the second to last Kulturecast of 2022.
There is a creature of the night whose very name strikes terror in the hearts of man. He fears only mirrors, the scent of garlic, and the sight of a crucifix. He feeds upon human blood. Only sunlight or a stake driven through his heart can destroy him or those whose blood he drinks. His name is Dracula.
I love you, and I can give you eternal life.
I knew it, an insurance salesman. I've already got Prudential.
I love the nightlife. I've got the boogie on the disco ride. Yeah.
Oh my, are you biting me? Oh. It was wild.
How many times did he bite you?
Oh, that. Just once. I told you it was our first date.
I won't let him get her.
I love the nightlife.
Well, Count, what do you say to that?
I would say leave Cindy alone and find yourself a nice Jewish girl, Doctor.
That's the other one, isn't it?
Dracula in New York. His style is irresistible. His curiosity is irrepressible. And when he takes a bite out of the Big Apple, his appetite is insatiable.
If you're hungry, Master, we could ring for the night maid.
Oh, I love the nightlife.
When you is gone, nobody's gonna bring you back here once you is dead.
Good evening.
Oh, I love the nightlife.
Master, please be careful.
What is it?
You nearly stepped on my dinner.
Bon appetit.
Oh, I love the nightlife.
I heard a rooster crow.
A rooster in New York City?
I cannot believe what I'm hearing.
It's him!
Yeah, or a rock group.
The second way to kill a vampire, Count. 3 silver bullets through the heart.
No, Rosenberg. That is a werewolf.
Really? Are you sure? I've lost her forever. He's drained all the blood out of her.
George Hamilton.
His blood in your eye.
Susan St. James. Richard Benjamin. Dick Shawn. Sherman Hemsley. Isabel Sanford. And Artie Johnson as Renfield.
Finally, after 712 years, to have someone bite me again.
Love at first bite.
That's right. On the Kulturecast next week, we're going to be talking about Love at First Bite, a movie about vampires. Never seen it.
Oh, I think that one will be more enjoyable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
That it's that good, huh?
Well, George Hamilton.
It's more enjoyable.
One of those George Hamilton 70s, attempts to do a Mel Brooks kind of parody film. Love at First Bite. I remember it as fun, but I think also, to be fair, the last time that I saw it, I was about 12 years old. So my idea of fun was maybe not as refined.
That's fair. So until then, Spencer, where can people find you if they're looking for
well, I'm still hanging out around Twitter watching it burn. So
you me, and I think a whole lot of other people.
Just to get into the spirit of latter days Twitter, you can find me as Zalman King. That's my current handle.
What about you, Jess?
You can find me on Instagram at writer Jess Byard. Pretty much everything I do ends up on that platform in some capacity. And you can find me on episodes of, as Chris mentioned earlier, our podcast, Scary Stories We Tell. And you can find me on various episodes of Kulturecast peppered throughout. And we have a bunch of other shows.
For the last 6 years now, I think. Yeah. As for me, weirdingwaymedia.com, that is the place where you can find everything that I work on, including this show, Scary Stories We Tell, like Jess mentioned, the Projection Booth, which is where Spencer and I met, which is Mike White's a lot more educationally focused movie podcast, which is always a welcome respite from the chuckle fuck dipshittery that is this show. I jest.
I'll throw out a pitch. You'll be able to find me on the Naked Kiss episode of the Projection Booth coming up soon.
And the Cassandra Cat. That was the last one that we did together. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one's already up. I guess Naked Kiss goes up really soon. That one I had a really good time with because I love Sam Fuller.
Well, and I just love being on Mike's show. But who doesn't?
So much fun.
Yeah. But and you can find this show, that show, and more shows that you should be listening to over at weirdingwaymedia.com. And if you can't find them there, maybe you shouldn't be listening to them. Jess, Spencer, thank you both so much for joining me on this lovely journey through a fucking film nightmare known as Frankenstein Unbound. Not to be confused with the porn parody title, Frankenstein Uncut. So...
I'm gonna see that one. I gotta see that one.
I'm a completionist too, so I'm gonna see that one as
all
well.
The Frankensteins.
Dr. Frankenstein had to reattach that foreskin.
You know what? I take my answer back. Frankenhooker is my favorite rendition of Frankenstein.
Oh, Frankenhooker's so good.
Yep.
It was the Frankenstein Uncut joke that really just
it
reminded you. Oh my God. And as always, we'll catch you on the next episode.